wouldn't be a stream that I post without some technical difficulties. Let me tell you, that's the nature of the business. Welcome back to Behind the Stream. I am your host, your Uncle Manny, and today we have a very special guest. For those of you who want to be producers out there in the film industry, in entertainment, just in content also, this is your man. Trust me. If anybody can put you on the right path, it is this man, okay? He is a writer, he is a director, he is a producer, he is a mentor, a colleague, a brother, a Yankee fan, and soon to be one of the best dads I know. We are welcoming today DC Saxton. Let's not waste his time because he is a busy man. So let me play my intro and then we'll bring him on.
Yo,
What is going on, brother? How you doing, man? Welcome
I'm
to the show,
doing
by the
good.
way.
Yeah, man. Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to see you.
Hey, listen, I was trying to get like my inner Shay Shay. You know what I'm saying? Like with I don't know if you watch Shay Shay's, right? And he like
I do. I
his
do.
bro, his intros are iconic. Like he'll go on for like 5, 10 minutes before he even introduces the guest. And you know what? I was like, you know what? That's greatness. I gotta emulate it a little bit. So hopefully you enjoyed that. How you doing
I
today, man?
don't. I don't have any Cat Williams like tea, but hopefully I can drop a few gems. Who knows?
You know what? That's all we can ask for, honestly. I don't think the world's ready for that much. He's already kind of changed the world in about in that whole 2 hours he did that. So I don't know what else he could do.
Exactly. But I'm good. I'm good, man. It's good to see you. It's been a while, so I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, man, thank you for coming on here, bro. This is an honor for me. We've talked about a long time doing a show together. I was supposed to be on your podcast, and then things just kind of everything just went crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I think COVID happened, and then just life in general. But I'm still gonna do that because I like your idea, and I can't wait to be a part of that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I'm excited. I'm actually getting things started up. Have a couple of meetings this week in regards to the podcast. So, yeah, be on the lookout. I'll definitely hit you up.
Hell yeah, appreciate that, bro. Well, listen, man, I wanted to bring you on here
Yeah.
because I know you posted a video probably like a week ago, I think it was, about producing and about how creatives and in the producing role are kind of unique, you
Yeah.
know. And it really resonated with me, and I wanted to kind of speak to the audience and those who are watching at home. Again, if you are watching live, you can be a part of the show. You can leave questions in there. We'll ask DC. We're gonna start off a little bit about who he is as a person, and then get into how he went from a student of film to a producer, and kind of go from there. So, man, so tell us about yourself, man. How'd you get started in, and what made you want to choose this path?
I've told this story at least a dozen times, and it's such an unconventional way because my love of baseball. I'm a huge baseball fan, have been so all my life, and that kind of was the path for me. It was one of those things where I started at a really young age. I started playing baseball at 4, and I did that for my entire sort of career up until that point. That was the goal: play at the professional level. High school did well, and then wound up having an opportunity to scout in front of the Yankees, which is dream come true as a kid from New York. It's my favorite team. But the thing is, I had a really sort of life changing event. I don't want to say event, but experience, like a couple of days before. And it was I had flown to LA to go to this benefit dinner with a nonprofit in New York called Ghetto Film School. And it was the first time I had been exposed to the industry. I got to meet all kinds of folks. I got to meet Johnny Knoxville and Sarah Michelle Gellar and David O. Russell. And I even met Topher Grace like right after he was Venom in Spider-Man. So it was like meeting all these people at this benefit dinner was super, super inspiring. But it was really the behind the scenes stuff that caught my eye because while we were on the trip, um, Catherine Hardwicke had invited us over to see like the behind the scenes of what's that movie? Twilight. She was finishing up the
Okay.
first Twilight movie,
Wow.
which we know now was gonna be a big franchise, and they were doing Foley. So she invited us to the studio to see that, and I was like, oh man, this can I curse? Oh no.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Why not?
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, this shit looked really interesting. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
had never seen the process of making movies. Like as student filmmakers, they give us these sort of, I don't want to say rundown, but not the most advanced tech equipment. And we're making films just like with these little cameras, based on what they're telling us. But I hadn't seen it at a professional level, right? It's sort of like your graduation through baseball. You start off with t-ball, but then you see actual baseball players go through their process, and you're like, man, I want to do that for the rest of my life. And so she introduced us to that, and then that same day, we got to go meet up with Spike Jonze as he was editing Where the Wild Things was. So we got to be in the studio and see all the behind the
Wow.
scenes of that. And from that moment on, I was like, this is it. I mean, I had played baseball my entire life, and it was the goal, but I was like, I want to do this forever. You know what I mean? I felt like I can go further with filmmaking, with storytelling, and it sort of unlocked this sort of passion that I didn't even know I had at 17, right? And at 17, I felt like I was getting in the game late. So that was sort of like when the fire started. And from that moment on, you know me, I haven't stopped running. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for real. I mean, and it's kind of crazy how just one trip can actually like change your life. You know what I mean? You caught the bug really quickly. It's wild to go from one passion to the next, and they're so different, right? Like
Yeah.
baseball or sports in general, and then film, completely different. Genres and styles. But that is kind of cool to hear that story, even though I've heard it before. But it's cool to hear that one little trip actually changed the trajectory of your whole entire life, man. That's kind of cool.
It's
Um,
interesting because they're different, but in the way that I view the world, they're similar in a lot of ways, right? Because in baseball, I played catcher. That was my position throughout my baseball career. And as a catcher, I'm able to see sort of everything. I'm directing the pitcher what to pitch. I can shift defenses where they need to be. I sort of have a sort of maestro control over the game, especially at the lower levels. And it allowed me to also be empathetic towards my teammates' positions, because I had also played those at some point, right? So it's like, okay, I know how hard it is to pitch or to play first base or to play outfield, right? It wasn't a one man thing. So we succeeded as a team because individually it didn't matter what we did, right? And so when I brought that over to filmmaking, especially now as a producer, I didn't start off as a producer, but especially now as a producer, I'm empathetic to every crew position. I know how
right.
hard it is to do what you are doing, and I'm not going to take that for granted. So let's figure out how we can work together and sort of build.
Absolutely, and I think that is like the key for being a good producer is knowing the individual roles and understanding like this is how long this takes, this is how long that takes, this is the obstacles that they have to kind of overcome. These are things that they have to navigate, and you yourself have to be able to navigate that. Sometimes for them, you might be more experienced than the person that's in that role, and you
Mm-hmm.
might have to do that, and you also might have to communicate that in an effective way. So I do give producers a lot of credit because you guys deal with a lot of different personalities all at once, and you have to recognize what those personalities are and be able to communicate effectively to get what you need to do to produce what you're trying to make. You know what I mean? At the end of the day. Now we know what kind of got you into the film
Yes.
world, but like, how did you know that producing was like your lane?
It took a really long time, honestly. I wouldn't say I got in, like, I tell people all the time I've been in the industry for almost 20 years. But I'm really counting when I was 17, and when you're that young and that new, it's hard to say I'm a part of the industry. I think today I feel a part of the industry. Maybe back then I didn't. But for like the first 10 years of my coming into the industry, I didn't exactly know what to do. You know, my dad was a DJ growing up. So I figured it was going to be sound or music in some way, right? Because I have a huge love of music. My cousin Freddie is part of hip hop group UTFO, made that hit song Roxanne, Roxanne back in the day. So my family in our blood is
Wow.
musical.
Right.
So I figured that was it. But after doing sound for a while, I was like, this doesn't feel right. I kind of wanted to. I was rebellious. I wanted to carve my own path. You know what I
Right.
mean? I still wanted to be artistic, but do something else. So I switched to camera. And the first opportunity that I had to do camera was shooting this PSA commercial for Sony for Amazing Spider-Man 2. That was my first time ever camera operating.
Bro,
Um,
that doesn't happen. You understand? Like you that's listen, that is an anomaly. Don't
it is.
expect that the first time you're on camera you're doing a Sony commercial or a promo. That's just the luck of the draw, honestly.
No, it truly is. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time in the right mindset, right? They
Right.
were looking the company was looking for somebody to do camera operating for this project, and my mindset at the time was I need to find a way to switch out of sound. If I wasn't in that mindset, I wouldn't have raised my hand and gone, "This is what I want to do." You know what I mean? So everything just sort of aligned, and I did that for a couple of years. I camera operated, and I AC'd, and I worked really hard to be a good technical crew member. Um, and then as sort of I grew into producing, what happened was I was on set one day, and the associate producer was like, "Oh man, our associate just dropped, and we need somebody to like do certain things that were required of a producer. Talk to vendors, help with crew stuff." And again, right place, right time, right mindset. I was like, you know what? I'd love to learn how that side of the industry works. So I raised my hand and wound up getting my first associate producer's credit on a small commercial for Google. And I did that and I really loved it. And then the same company that I wound up doing the PSA for Sony, they had just got a contract to do some videos for Warner Brothers for a PSA. And they were like, we're looking for people to help run it. And I'm a very confident person, even if I did at the time have the skill set. I was like, bet, that's me. I raised my hand again. Let me know what you need. We'll figure it out. And there was some rough patches, but the PSAs came out great. We got a write up in Hollywood Reporter. Warner Brothers loved them. They put them on DVDs. I even helped secure music rights from Alessia Cara at the time, who was a big upcoming pop star.
It's
Working
wild.
with Sony
Yeah.
and working with them, like I just had at the time this hunger and initiative that I still do, but like is required of you to make it in this industry. You know what I mean? Because it's all about connection. It's all about drive. It's all about initiative at the end of the day. So I knew I wanted to produce after I did that Warner Brothers one, because I remember thinking to myself, getting this Alessia Cara song is either going to be the death of me in producing, or it's going to work out perfectly, and I'm going to be really proud of what I did. And it happened to be the latter. You know what I mean? And
Right.
it worked out perfectly. And I talked to her, I talked to her dad, I talked to her agent, and they loved what we were doing. So the fact that I pulled that off at that young age, I was like 25 at the time. I was like, yeah, I can do this for real, for real. I was like, this isn't a talent that I'm gonna waste. So ever since then, ground running, I've been producing as much as I can.
Yeah, and just like hearing you talk and listening to how you're explaining this, like you could tell like you were like destined for what you're doing. Like the universe got a plan for you, and it's putting you in the right places at the right time. And like you said, having the right mindset, bro, because you can be in a room full of opportunity, but if you don't have the right mind to seize that
Yeah,
opportunity, is not you're just not gonna get it. That's just what it is. You know what I mean? And that's the advice that anybody for any industry should really listen to. Like it's all about, yes, getting to the right place and being there at the right time, but also having the right mindset to secure the opportunity. You know what I mean? Because
yeah,
sometimes opportunities come to you and you're not ready for them. and you think you are, but you're really not. And it's kind of like a way to kind of to humble you, you know what I mean? In a way of like, hold on, bro, you're not ready for this yet, you know? Now a lot of people really don't understand like what a producer does, or like, so is there a way that you could describe it to somebody who's not in the industry?
Yeah, that's been a real big topic of conversation among producers nowadays because a lot of people, especially with the writer strike that just happened, a lot of people got confused when they saw AMPTP. One of the P's in there stand for producers, but the AMPTP are the studios, not us, right? We're individual producers. A lot of us in the PGA, but studios get producers credit because they're the ones sometimes funding, and they'll get executive producer credit. You know what I mean? So they get that tag, but they're not what we do. And so a lot of people thought when the strikes were going on that we were on their side. And the truth is we were actually on the writers and gaffers and IATSE. We were all on their side. I've gone to protest with my fellow union members, right? My fellow union brothers and sisters. But the best way to sort of like explain what a producer does, in my opinion, and it could be philosophical, is we can enact the most and greatest impact without getting in the way, right? And I know that sounds vague in some way, but essentially, we're doing a lot of things. We're doing budgeting, we're doing hiring, we're doing payroll, right? But all of these things that I do that are in service of the project should not impact the people actually making said project, right? My decisions and my choices shouldn't limit the director. It shouldn't limit the gaffer or the sound person, It shouldn't even limit the PA. Everything I do is in service of them. I get the title of producer because I'm putting it all together so that people can see how it fits, right? So that's how my impact is felt on set. Once I tell people a lot of the time, if we're on set and things are going smooth, I've done my job. 90% of my job I'm doing before I get on set, right? That's
Right.
where I'm enacting my impact. And then I get to just be there to sort of like a crew member, make sure everything is going well. So, there's a lot of levels to what producers do, and there are titles for them: line producer, there are story producers, their associates, they're your executives, and just regular field producers. We can put titles on all of them, but at the end of the day, I think every producer's main job is to enact the greatest impact while not being in the way of the crew that's actually trying to make the product.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I personally, I've been on sets where you could tell the producer wasn't, the greatest producer, and the whole entire world knew, or they'll say the whole entire show knew, man, this is a shit show, so to speak. And those of you who don't know what it is basically, a show that's kind of like not being ran right. It's kind of chaotic. Nobody knows what's going on. But I've also been on shows where you don't realize that there's fires that are being put out as they're being put out. And I think to me, that's what makes a really good show. That's what makes a really good producer, is having those moments where you really don't know what that, man, holy crap, we weren't allowed to shoot in here, but somehow 5 minutes early before we get here, all of a sudden we're okay to do that, and I think it really is a superpower that producers can have. It takes a lot of determination and grit to be a producer, amongst other things. You know what I mean? Is there
Yeah.
one misconception about producing that you wish more people understood?
I think people think we all have huge egos. We don't, right? You've been on you like you just said, you've been on sets where you have producers who are very level headed, and because it's such a front and center above the line position, like a
Right.
director, like a writer, or like an actor, people assume we have this large ego. And for the most part, a lot of producers I meet do not have that. But you and I know people who have been on set. We've been on sets where producers make the shoot all about them,
Right.
right? And that sort of tanks the whole experience for everybody, right? It sounds crazy, but I'm going to break it down to even something more simpler than that. As a producer, you're also setting an experience for people on your set. That is your set that you're building. People should walk away from this also feeling good. Product aside, if you've hired the right people, the product will be good. But people being on set, that work environment, that's all based on you. And so I've been on sets where the producer makes it all about them. And at the end of the day, like it tanks the experience. So I think like the misconception is that we're all, we have egos or we all have money, which we don't. You know what I mean?
Right.
I know
Yeah.
producers
Okay.
who don't actually fund. You know, it's
Oh,
like
okay, bro.
look. I wish I did, right? I wish I just had the money to fund whatever I want. But
Right.
like I said in the video that you referenced earlier, a lot of people who are producing are just really organized people who know how to lay out a plan, follow that plan, and execute, and necessarily aren't responsible for raising the money. That is a producer, someone who does do that, but that's not all
Right.
producers. You know what I mean? So no ego. Our pockets aren't lined with gold. You know what I mean? I think approach us as you would any other creative, but know that we have a brain for logistics, so we're always there to help you.
Right. And that's actually a good point. It does take a special brain. I mean, in your video, you talked about being left-brained people, and I definitely can see that. Some people might not even be good at organizing; they just good at getting stuff done. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
for me personally, like if I was to be a producer coming up in the game, like I would look at that as my strength. Like I might not be the most organized person in the room, but I know how to get something done. I know how to make, not make, but I know how to get someone to say yes to something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like a huge part of being a producer is like understanding that part, like,
Yeah.
um, and really people don't realize that, and this is going to be a quick segue into like streaming and stuff, but people don't really realize like even doing this show that I'm doing right now, is producing. I have to come up with questions. I have to come up
Yeah.
with, the I have to come up with the guests. I have to, kind of format it in a certain way. And a lot of people don't realize that even doing YouTube videos, whether you are just starting out or you've been doing it for years, even putting together YouTube videos in a sense is producing content. Yes, you are
100%.
becoming, you're calling yourself a creator, a content creator, but in reality, you are a producer. You can use those tools and you can go to a company and say, I produce X, Y, and Z. There's been tons of successful content creators who have producers behind them. But if you're doing this by
Mm-hmm.
yourself and you're doing it on a regular basis, you are essentially, in my opinion, producing content. Now, when it comes down to the rise of streaming platforms, like how have the strategies as a producer changed in terms of pitching and like developing content?
I mean, in so many ways that even from the first time it changed 10 years ago when we saw sort of the rise of Netflix and everybody, it's changed even again since then. I think access to the content that we have, the libraries, the original IP, the sort of facilitating of talent, it's shifted a lot. Traditionally there was a pipeline of some sorts for writers to go through to make something, for directors to go through, and I feel like nowadays it's opened, right? Content has become more democratized. Equipment is more accessible. There are more writers than ever, more shooters, more DPs, everything. And so there's more content to be had and to be distributed. So I think, when it first started back in like 2015, 2014, maybe even before then, I may be, a little behind. Um, the streamers wanted talent. And so early on, you saw them throw a bunch of money at these really high profile celebrities and creators to sort of get them to make content for them. And now what we're seeing is sort of that sort of contraction of what that was. There aren't so many overall deals out there. Isn't as much money because now we're in a streaming landscape, right? Before they were competing with studios and TV networks, but nowadays the main source that people have is streaming, whether that's YouTube, Netflix, Tubi, right? Who I think has a very interesting business model. All of these places are sort of staking their claim within the space because of the content that's out there. And so I think nowadays you're finding less and less. It's I wouldn't use this word often, but there's less of a thirst from studios. You know what I
Right.
mean? Before they were like, we need to get as much good content as possible, but now we have a decade plus of that content. And now they're like, we don't gotta be as thirsty anymore. You know, sometimes you can come to us instead of us having to go to you, and that makes it a little hard because we know how hard it is to get in the rooms. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I could see that, but I also I also see a little bit of more of a shift as well, where um, I think a lot of production companies, or I wouldn't say production companies, but streaming services are looking at, for instance, YouTube, right? You're looking
Mm-hmm.
at these big creators, these big influencers, even not even just influencers, just big channels that are on YouTube that have a following. We're talking about maybe 100K plus,
Yep.
depending on what you're bringing in, and they're partnering with them, or kind of creating content that is very, very similar. I mean, just for example, Netflix just signed with the Papa Balloon.
Yep. I
I think
saw
it was
that.
a podcast or a show that,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to be on Netflix. They're also developing kind of stuff. If you don't know, there's a show called It's Inside, where the inside man from the UK, they is basically like a reality show,
Mm-hmm.
a reality game show. Like they're taking these big streamers and content creators, and they're producing content for them at a higher level, and then kind of taking some of, I'm sure they're taking some of the money for themselves. They wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? Like do it for free, basically. So it's interesting to see that. Yes, it's not more about let's come to you or you come to us. It's more like, okay, how can we capitalize on what we have? With what, like, how can we combine what we have with what you have, and we both make money, and we both can kind of, there's still a fight to see who keep you on the platform. I don't think that's going anywhere. Um, right now, in my opinion, the sleeper is YouTube. I think there's a lot of content that is on YouTube that is for free. That such as dating shows. You have series. You have movies on here. You have podcasts on here. Is There's a boom. There's a boom, and a lot of people don't see it. And I think that a lot of production companies and producers will find lanes in that, as far as work, and being able to just do what they love to do. You know what I mean? Like, my question though for you is, like, do you think that boom is like sustainable, or like do you think
Yeah.
it will shift, in how stories are being made and consumed? Like, do you think?
I mean, how
What do you
stories are
think?
being consumed will always shift, right? How we've consumed stories just throughout the history of content creation has always shifted. You go back to the original Nickelodeons of the early, like late 1800s. You know what I mean? Where people are
Right.
cranking the machines just to watch. How we watch stuff has changed. But I do think what the sort of landscape that there is now is sustainable from a YouTuber's perspective. Let me give you an example because you bring up a good point. Mr. Beast is the largest content creator currently on YouTube and probably in the world. Not just from the perspective of him getting all those views, but the budget at which he's creating those experiences, massive, right? And he signed the deal with Amazon to do Beast games, which I watched, and you know what I mean. It was bumpy and things weren't perfect, but at the end of the day, Amazon wound up with a show that not only he's proud of, but they can say they're proud of. But to me, as a producer, the most unconventional thing that they did that entire time was that they also released the first episode on YouTube because they know that's where Jimmy's audience is, right? And they know that
Right.
if I can drive his 200 plus million people, and it might be more, from YouTube over to watch the rest of the show on Amazon Prime, it's just about migrating those people over. As a content creator yourself, migrating your subscribers from one platform to another is the biggest challenge. So
Yes,
signing
absolutely.
so signing a deal with Jimmy and the Mr. Beast brand is not good if I can't get people from YouTube to Amazon Prime, right? So it is a strategic move to have him release that first episode. And I think as we get deep after that sort of Beast Games experience, as we get deeper into what the juggernaut of what YouTube is and what they can become, we'll see more and more huge channels do it. The Sidemen, I'm sure, will continue to do something like this. Jake and Logan Paul have consistently done stuff like this. You know, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
fighting Mike Tyson on Netflix, you're sort of migrating those fans that you have between platforms. Well, it's a sustainable model if you're a YouTuber. If you are a streamer, I don't know if it's 100% sustainable, right?
Hmm.
The reason I say I don't know if it's 100% sustainable is because of how quickly YouTube moves and how slow streamers in studio move. You know what I mean? 1 second, these can be the trends and hottest people on YouTube, and it will take streamers a year, 2 years to even catch up on that, and that might be too long, right? The gift of YouTube, the gift of TikTok is that we can give content to people really, really fast and they can get it quickly. But that's not how the industry moves, unfortunately. And none of the studios, I believe, are set up in a way to move that quickly. So what they're going to wind
Hmm.
up building are either evergreen or legacy content to hope people watch later on as supplements to those channels and to those creators. Could we see that change in the future? Maybe. Maybe one of these days we'll actually see a huge studio start off on YouTube. Wouldn't that be a dream, right? To see somebody at the level of a Warner or a Sony start from the YouTube side, you know? That could be Jimmy, that could be the Mr. Beast brand, but who knows? We won't know that for another couple of years.
Yeah,
When
I
they
mean, personally, to speak on that, not to cut you off, sorry, but to speak on that personally, if there was anybody that I think that could do that right now, I would think it would be the people like Kai Cenat or
Yes.
I Show Speed. Like those people
Mm-hmm.
are huge, right? I mean, right now, Speed is in China as we speak, and
Yep.
he is he is broadcasting live his whole entire experience, right? And even from, and I kind of did some studying before we had this conversation, and it was like, there was a charity soccer match, right? I don't watch
Mm-hmm.
soccer, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Never have, I don't know if I will again, but these big content creators came together and put on an exhibition match. And not only did they do that, but they had, sideline, reporters, they had, commentators. All of it was a different vibe. It wasn't the typical way you would hear soccer.
Yeah.
And not only that, the what I found fascinating and I think was it's a different layer, and why I think streaming is kind of catching up is
Mm-hmm.
because after the game, you were able to go to Speed's live, and he was coming off of the court, or whatever, I can't remember what they called it, but he was coming off the field, and you see him walking into the locker room talking about how he lost the game and how he felt behind it, and it was
Mm-hmm.
instantaneous. You know what I mean? Like, you were watching the game live from different angles. Not only that, they also tapped into Speed's camera, so when he was on the sideline, you could see him talking because he was one of the captains.
Yeah.
So it was different layers that's being produced as well, and like to your point, like that is live producing. So like I think really really we're gonna see, like you said, we could potentially see something big start and come about from that. I mean, these I don't want to say clicks, but these content groups are putting together a lot of interesting content, and it's stuff that is getting, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people to watch every single day. You know what I mean? Like Kai Cenat has about 50 to 60,000 people that watch him on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Like, and he streams every single day. Like, there's no show that that you can say on television or streaming that on a consistent basis has those like the same amount of numbers all the time, no matter how much they produce. You will see a
Yeah.
dip. I mean, wrestling has been on for decades, and
Yeah.
even they go through times where they don't have a huge number, on a consistent basis. And even to speak on that, they recently invited him to come to WrestleMania, and he streamed the whole entire show from the front seat as a different
Mm-hmm.
experience for his chat. So I think that there's something there when it comes to integrating live streaming experiences into the world of scripted content. Sorry, I got off on a tangent, but this
No,
is
I
really
mean
interesting stuff
you're
to me.
you're completely right. I think the this next generation of content creators that are in streaming, they're an even faster pace than YouTube. You know what I mean? Like we thought YouTube was fast, and then streaming comes along, and it's like, no, we're faster.
Right.
And to sort of hold that attention of audiences that are as large, like Kai in his last streaming marathon. No, not the Batman one, but the one before that, the one during Thanksgiving. What did they reach?
Mafia.
800? Mafiathon, like 800, 900,000 people at one time. That's an
Yep.
insane amount. That's an insane number of people to be on one stream at a time. And I think as they grow, as AMP grows and their catalog grows and their portfolio deepens, it's going to be even harder to deny the fact that their power and reach rivals that of some studios, right? Because these are the
Absolutely.
numbers that studios are hoping to put up. So honestly, again, from a creator standpoint, it's sustainable. But if I'm a studio, I'm trying to figure out how I can catch up or try to figure like how I can implement the content we have into that sort of model. Right now, I don't think they
Yeah.
have. And that's why
I
they're
mean, I think
tapping
it's
creators.
definitely a challenge, and like you said, yeah, I think it's just right what you just said right now. That's why they're tapping into creators. They want to hear the mind of what the creator has to think because they're in it. As a producer, I can come and look at somebody's YouTube channel and say, hey, man, I can create some great content for you, but I have to work with them. I can't just be like, oh, this is what works. There are some companies who will go and look at the numbers like, oh, this is what they'll break it down in a number way kind of deal,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what happened to one of the car channels that I watch. A production company came in and yeah, their production value went up and they had different videos, but they were doing things based off of the metrics and they lost a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the sauce and a lot of the core values of what the channel was originally about. At the end of the day, these are YouTube channels, right? And I think producers and other production crew jobs are treating it as like an ABC or NBC. It's a channel that someone can turn to any given day, 24/7, and watch whatever it is that they want on that specific channel. And I think that's a beautiful thing, And I think that the job market is gonna look very, very different in the next couple years. What do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. My 6-year-old nephew the other day, we were at the baby shower, right? Because you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier, having a baby, and he was crying about something. I walk over to him, I say, "What's wrong?" And he has an older brother who's 13, and he was like, "He won't help me become a YouTuber." And it was like it's such a small like when you and I couldn't have thought like that was a thing 10 years ago, right? But this new generation, it is what they want to do, right? He's 6. He doesn't know how to, record himself or what to do or whatever, but his ambition, at least at that moment, it may change. He's 6, but was to be a YouTuber. Because that's what he watches and that's who he sees and that's who he sees has the biggest impact on him. Like you and I, we grew up watching movies, we wanted to be in the industry because that's the biggest impact that it sort of had on us. So
Right.
I definitely see it completely changing the landscape. I think what needs to change is people's perspectives on the job. Oh, sorry, not perspective. Sort of their view on the job, right? Which I guess is
One hundred
perspective.
percent.
It's
One
like
hundred percent.
it's not a hobby. It's not something that you just do for fun. This is
Nope.
an actual job that you can do and make money on. If you put the same effort you do into any other job, you could be successful in this too.
And listen, and not a low paying job either. Like
Mm-hmm.
I recently posted that Ford Motor Company put out a job description for a content creator, and the pay scale was $100,000 to $200,000 a year.
Yeah.
Like, do like that's like doctor money, bro. Like that's
Yeah.
crazy, man. Like for you to look at that and say like not take it serious. Like I get it, like it's kind of like how boomers were with rock music and all type and rap music and whatnot. It's one of those things that is hard to believe can be sustainable, and I think it's because there's not really no instant gratification. Like when you clock in, in a week you're gonna get a check. A
Yeah.
lot of people do this, including myself. They do this for free. They do this
Mm-hmm.
because they love to do it. and they're hoping that at some point they gain enough traction to be able to make money off of it. It's one of those things that is it's not easy to do. And when you step in the foot of something, that's when you really will see we can make it. I can make this look easy, no problem. You know what I mean? I can make it look natural. That's not the issue. It's all the stuff that happens behind the scenes that you just realize, man, this is a career. This is not even just a job. This is an actual like career for real. And I will argue with anybody when it comes to that because there's time and effort and money that goes into this stuff. You know what I mean? So listen, there's a lot of questions left that I want to get to. I know I want to be mindful of your time.
Yep.
We ended up working on a movie together called Ovals. If you want to play that trailer, or do you think we should try to get through these questions?
Play the trailer. I mean, I'm always happy to share the work.
All right, cool. Let's watch the trailer to Ovals real quick.
I don't recognize the voice. It's not mine. What frightens me most is I've lost myself. Somewhere I'm scared, alone, and in the dark, crying for help, but I get sad when I look in the mirror. I'm saddened by the man I see. When I speak, I don't recognize the voice. It's not mine. What frightens me most is I've lost myself. Somewhere I'm scared, alone, and in the dark, crying for help, but I cannot find me.
That trailer in like a while.
Bro, me neither, bro. And honestly, watching that, I'm like, bro, like that was the time, bro. Like we did that. I had the pleasure of being on set. I also colored that, which I'm thankful for as well. You trusted me. You didn't know me from a hole in the wall, so trusted me for, with that. I looked at that, bro, and it's like, bro, people don't realize what it took to do that. There was, car accidents. There was, fights with doors. We took like a whole day in the studio just to figure out how to make a door from scratch, and it worked out at the end of the day, but it was a learning experience for everybody. And it was a great time, I wanted to make sure people share that, and it was worth it because that trailer and short film actually, got you noticed by, Issa Rae and her people, right?
Yeah, man, since we shot that movie, so much in life has changed, and even that experience with like Issa and her team was, unexpected, right? When we shot, it's sort of a passion project at the time, something that I really had wanted to do after years of producing other shorts. I was like, I finally, have something of mine that I really, really want to say. And so when we made that, I wasn't even married yet, you know what I mean? And now I'm on my 5th wedding anniversary coming up, and I'm about to have a kid. So life has completely changed. But I remember like going into the award season, I was like, I just want people to see it. Like, I just wanted to put my voice out there for it to be heard, for people to be like, oh, this is an interesting perspective on something. And obviously, I knew there would be some people who maybe didn't understand what I was saying, and that's okay, right? Art is subjective in that way. But then, like, I saw an opportunity with Issa's team for something she does called Short Film Sundays, and I applied, and I didn't even think anything of it because I was like, only one person really gets it per week, and she only does it 4 weeks of the year. So I was like, the chances are really small. Lo and behold, like, she reached out to me and was like, hey, we'd love to, feature Ovals on Short Film Sunday. And that was such a surreal moment because I remember being at my bachelor party like the week of my wedding, and we finish and we're leaving, and I'm checking my phone on Instagram, and I have a bunch of notifications, and one of them is from Issa. She had posted the short on her personal page, and she had posted it on her story as well, and she had said Oval from visionary director DC Saxton. I was like, wow, that was really fucking cool at the moment, you know what I mean? Because
for real,
one, Issa's calling me visionary, and I know she's seen the movie and I know she liked it, but it really gave confirmation to a lot of what I was doing. the things that I do, I'm most critical of, like writing, and when you put your art out there, it's really vulnerable, and you don't want to do that sort of thing. But that confirmation was really cool, not only for me, for the crew. You guys did a hell of a job, and I think it's a testament to all the work that we had put in before, on pre-production and what we did in post-production. And between ISA and getting into Pan African Film Festival, Ovals was just a successful movie all in all, and thousands of people saw the movie now, way more than I could have ever hoped for. And like I said, some get it, some don't, but that's art, right? You interpret it at the time that you're watching it, and if you watch it again later, you may interpret it differently. That's the beauty of it all, right?
Absolutely. And then here's some more confirmation. Someone on YouTube says, "Good job, guys." Barrel, wait, thank you for watching on YouTube. We appreciate you being a part of the show. That being said, if someone wanted to start out in this with no connections, like they don't know anybody, what is the smartest first step they can do to get into producing, you think?
There are two things that I would say. There are two paths. The first thing I would ask them is, are you in school? If the answer to that is yes, go to the film department, talk to the filmmakers there, and say, I want to help you make something. Those filmmakers are so hungry to get something made that if you guys hit it off on a human level, they'll put some trust in you to get it done, right? That's the easiest access if you're in school. If you are not in school, I think the simplest way to sort of get into producing is find people who are making YouTube videos, like you mentioned earlier, because it is a great access point to start learning how to produce. Offer to help them. Go to as many film festivals as you can. If you live in New York, there are a ton. If you live in any big market city, there will be plenty of film festivals. If you do not live in a big market city, go to the nearest college, right? Again, film students are hungry to have their things made. And whenever they can offload the burden of producing something onto someone else, they will, right? They're happy to give responsibility to someone else as long as they can focus on the vision. So go to your local community college and see if they have a media department in which they need help. If you're in high school, go to your AV teachers and ask, hey, do you have or need any help with anything that I can help with? So I think you just have to start at a really basic level of networking. Meet people is like the key. When you get at a higher level, you'll realize that your early networks were the key the entire time. It is not the work. It doesn't matter if early on you make a masterpiece, if from that point on you don't do anything else in your career, right? It's if you want sustainability, if you want to sort of make it within the industry, being able to network and connect with people is like numero uno as a producer, because you're going to be managing egos on set. And so meeting crew members, meeting other artists, meeting other producers is going to be the key to it.
Would you say that's one skill or habit that's kind of like served you well as a producer that other people can use to kind of break in?
1,000%. And it goes back to what I said earlier about playing baseball. You're dealing with a ton of egos on that field. Everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be the star. Everybody has a problem. As your job as the producer is to recognize all of that. It's to empathize with all of that and find the best solution for every person, right? You won't always find the solution, but your job is to try and come up with a solution to make that experience for them as easy as possible. And that comes with some interpersonal skills that need to be learned through networking, right? That comes through meeting people and having conversation. So, I would say that's the number one skill you need to have as a producer. As you know, don't be an asshole. You'll continuously get hired. You know that.
Literally, bro. Like you literally just have to have good attitude and show up on time. That's like the first two things that you need when it comes to working in the film industry. Just literally show up on time. That's usually 15 minutes early. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And don't be a prick. Like, just have a good attitude, good positive attitude, and you will get hired every single time. Like, and the crazy thing is, like, the job part of it is something that, like, comes later. You will learn, you will figure it out. You know,
Mm-hmm.
people will
Mm-hmm.
realize, like, your struggles, and a lot of the times they will help you, unless you're on something where there's no time for that, and then you kind of like,
Yeah.
you know, chances are you should probably should have never took that job. You know, I can talk from that from experience.
Facts.
For real.
Facts.
I can
Yeah.
talk from that from experience, bro. There's one of those times where you take an opportunity and you know your mindset was there and everything else was there, but like you know your skill level just wasn't there, and that happens all the time. You know,
It
do
does.
you, we're gonna wrap it up with two more questions here. Like,
Yeah.
is there a common mistake that you see a lot of aspiring producers make, and you know how do you think they could avoid that?
I think a lot of young producers jump the gun, or like you said, they take things under their belt that is just way above their pay grade, or they overpromise. Right? I think our job as producers is to also manage expectation. And so when you're taking on projects and when you're sort of meeting with artists about projects that they want to do, you sort of have to be able to see the project for what it actually is. No bullshit, right? Like, I know you want to make the greatest thing in the world. I know you wish you had $1 million to make the thing that you want to make, but here's the facts. You have $3,000, not $1 million. And we can do this, but we cannot do this. My job as a producer is to be as honest with you as possible. I'm not going to bullshit you, don't bullshit me, so you can have your thing made. Because the worst thing that can happen as a young producer is to jump on a project and it completely fall apart, right? And it ruin the relationship that you had with that artist, right? You don't want to sort of attach yourself to those like situations that feel like a time bomb, right? That feels like a terrible thing to say about somebody's project, but sometimes you have artists that are just not ready to make the thing that they are asking to be made. And it's like
Absolutely.
I'm gonna step away because you can't see the expectations that I'm helping you set. And so I say for young producers, don't get overzealous, right? Don't get above, don't get underwater, right? Don't have things pile up too quickly. Sort of manage your own expectations. What do I want out of this? Be honest with yourself with that, right? What do I want out of this? When I did Quest for a Craft, right? I knew that I wanted to work with high level talent and celebrity because I knew that that would be my way into the PGA. Was I right? Yes. And now I am in the PGA. You know what I mean? I knew, like, I had a plan for myself. I knew I wasn't above water with any of the tasks I was doing, and it didn't damage any of the relationships that I've had. So, I think really try to play within your ballpark. Don't swing too hard. Something that you learn in baseball. Don't swing too hard. You don't want to hurt yourself, right?
Right.
In any sport, they'll tell you don't overexert yourself because you don't want to get injured. That's the same truth in film. Don't overexert yourself. You don't want to hurt your chances later on down the line, right? Reputation stick. Like, we talk
Facts.
about like things in the industry all the time. It's like it's who you know, and people want to be like, oh, it's not. It is, and reputation stick. And if you set a bad reputation for yourself early as someone who can't get the job done, who flakes on the job, or overpromises and fails, that will stick with you for a while. So really try to like be realistic with yourself when it comes to what you're able to do as a producer.
And that's you know, you ain't lying, bro. That's one of those things that a lot of people um, don't understand. You know, I think also we have to realize like artists think on a different wavelength than normal people. I guess I don't want to call them not normal because artists are normal. They just, I
Mm-hmm.
think artists kind of get so caught in like in love with the project that they have that sometimes it's hard for them to allow someone who doesn't have that same you know attachment to the project allow them to tell them what they can and cannot do with
Yeah.
some people just cannot handle that and you
Yeah.
have to be understanding of that. You know, you have to be like you said realistic with yourself. Like I'm not gonna get through to this guy. He or she isn't gonna listen to what I need, and you know when to be like, hey, maybe this person will be a better fit. You know, it's okay to say no. It's okay to pass on the job to somebody else. You know, that's also how connections get made. Those are things that I think anybody who's trying to get into the film industry is hard. You know, it's very hard when you first starting out in the film industry to say no to work. You want to work, you want to make money, obviously. You want to gain the traction and momentum. It is a real thing in the industry. You know, momentum and traction is for real. Like the more you work, the better people get to know you, the more connections you get made, the more experience you have. And sometimes you can get caught up in that and you forget why you even doing it. You forget other things as well, and it's important that you remind yourself of that and understand that you can say no to opportunities. Not all opportunity is going to be for you. Some opportunity is for you to pass it to somebody or to inform the next person or just make that connection. Being called for the job is, my opinion, one of the things that lets you know that you're on the right track. You don't necessarily have to take the job once you're called, but being called, yeah, that's a huge step for real, for real.
Oh, 100%. And I think you sort of hit it on the head. I also like to believe and like to think when you're young that these are the times to make the mistakes. It sounds so cliche. It really, really does. But like when you're on set is when you don't want to make the mistakes, right? In your prep, in your pre-pro, that's where you sort of want to start to feel out the things that you're sort of doing, you know? And so I feel like one of the things we can do as the generation prior to the one coming in is foster out that fear of making a mistake. I think a lot of people don't try or do in certain situations because they're afraid to fail and that this is their one chance. And I promise you, like we said earlier, as long as you're not an asshole and you show up on time and you have that initiative to want to be better, it will it will facilitate itself sort of into more opportunity, right? This is not an industry where you can't fail. Plenty of people have failed on various projects, but you can't be afraid to fail or you will fail.
Awesome, man. I appreciate that. Listen, we'll wrap it up with one final thing.
Yep.
Now, I know there's, tons of advice that we've already given, but is there something that you've gotten that kind of guides you to this day that you want to pass to others? Like, I want to give you the final thought, if you will, Jerry Springer-esque, the final thought for this, because you are a very knowledgeable guy and, I respect you, not only, as a colleague, but as a mentor and someone who
Yeah.
me and you could talk for hours. Like
We could.
legit, if you didn't have something to do, we would still be figuring out stuff to talk about. Like that's
Yeah.
just our connection, and it also plays with who you are as a person. That's a very good trait that you have as a producer. So if I'll leave the floor to you, you take how long you need.
Yeah. I'll even say this, like even at the stage that I am, I have mentors who I consistently look at for guidance and for sort of road mapping you know, where even I want to go in my career. I think I've come a long way in what I've accomplished, but I feel like I can get even more and even further. And I had a mentor recently tell me to be aggressive respectfully, right? And I've never been one to shy away from a no or being ignored because you sort of have to have a thick skin in this industry. It's not even like maybe I'll have a thick skin. No, it is a requirement for you to have a thick skin in this industry because the amount of times someone will tell you no is a lot. And it is debilitating if you don't have that right mindset to sort of push through. And recently, I was talking to a mentor of mine as I'm packaging a feature, and he said, with studios, with executives, you just sort of have to be aggressive respectfully. And I took that to heart. You know what I mean? I'm reaching out to folks, and I'm throwing fear out the window, the fear of the no, the fear of being ignored, because I'm really passionate about the projects that I make. And I'm really passionate about the project that I am currently trying to get made. And so I can't let I can't let that sort of fear of them not answering an email stop me. And I found leeway in certain areas and leeway in others. And I say if you're a young producer, you just gotta throw that fear out the window, man. It will be the thing that holds you back, you know. Don't be afraid to tell that story. Don't be afraid to send that email. Don't be afraid to give that note because even if the person doesn't take it, even if the person doesn't call you back, at least you got that energy out. At least you got that sort of that advice that you wanted to give, or you got that artistic part of you got to shine a little bit that day, and that may be the thing that gets you through the week, you know. So I say toss fear out the window. It's unneeded. It's a lot harder and easier said than done. So forgive yourself if you aren't having the day to throw it out and you just sort of need to recalibrate. Forgiveness, throw fear out the window, and sort of attack this industry with that sort of ferocity that you want and that you have. Yeah, that would be my advice.
Hell yeah, bro. I can't wait to have you back on the show when you are like final with your project. You know, I know it's something that you've been working with and working on for a very long time. I have faith in it. I can't wait to see that. Hopefully I could be there, you know, maybe in some capacity, you know, even if it's like, you know, just kind of behind the scenes, you know, talking with you as your day goes by. I think that would be a great video, you know, or just even just a great time, you know, to be there, you know. I can't wait for that. But I appreciate you and you giving me the time. You know, you're a busy man lately, so I don't want to hold you up any longer. So, man, I thank you for coming on by, and I can't wait to do this again, bro.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I had a really good time, and I actually have an idea, but we'll talk offline. We'll talk offline.
All right, bet. Sounds good, bro. Sounds good. I'm gonna wrap this up though.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you again, bro. Hey, listen, shout out to DC Saxton, the man, the myth, the producing legend. You know, you're going to see that man do some great things. I just know it. He talks about tough skin, and honestly, it's because he's a Yankee fan. Like, I'm just going to put it out there because when you're a Yankee fan, you like legit are born with tough skin. Like, that's like out the womb. Nothing can kind of like, you know, deter you. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this. You know, if you're watching it after and you're watching it, you know, not on the live, you're watching it from the video standpoint. Listen, if you're watching this afterwards, you can leave your questions in the comments. I'll make sure he gets them and I'll try to answer them, you know, the best way I can. That being said, I am Uncle Manny. Life is too short to watch terrible movies, so let me help you with that.